Welcome to the session 18 of the novel The Edible Woman by Margaret Atwood. In this session, I'm going to analyze chapter 30 and chapter 31. Now, let us see chapter 30. Marian had just got home and was struggling with a wrinkled dress, trying to get the zipper undone. And the phone rang. Peter's, Peter's voice was icy with anger. Marian, where the hell have you been? I was looking for you to get you in the group picture and you were gone. Of course, I could not make a big production of it with all those people there. But after they had gone home, I looked all over for you. Your friend Lucy and I got in the car and drove up and down the streets and we called your place half a dozen times. We were both so worried. Damn nice of her to take the trouble. It is nice to know there are some considerate women left around. Marian went into the bedroom and took off her clothes. In a spirit approaching gay rebellion, Marian neglected to erase her bathtub ring. What she needed was something that avoided words. She did not want to get tangled up in a discussion. She went out to the kitchen and sat down at the table to make herself a list, but threw down the pencil after she had written several words. Three nesting plastic bowls, teaspoons, aluminium cake decorator, and a cake tin. She tried the things and began to crack and separate the eggs, hardly thinking, concentrating all her attention on the movement of her hands, and then, when she was beating and sifting and folding on the relative times and the textures. It was a long time since she had made a cake. While the cake was in the oven baking, she rewashed the bowls and mixed the icing. Then she divided the icing into three parts in the three bowls. The larger portion she left white, the next one she tinted a bright pink, almost red, with red food coloring she had bought. And the last one she made dark brown by stirring cocoa into it. She unearthed a long platter from the very bottom of the stack of plates in the sink and scoured it thoroughly under the tap. She tested the cake, she took it out of the oven and turned it upside down to cool. She was glad Ainsley was not at home. She did not want any interference with what she was going to do. In fact, it did not look as though Ainsley had been at home at all. Marian wondered in passing how Ainsley was ever going to cram the random contents of the room into something as limited and rectilinear as a set of suitcases. While the cake was cooling, she went into the bedroom and tidied the hair, pulling it back and pinning it to get rid of the remains of the hairdresser's convulsions. The cake was not cooling quickly enough. She took it out of the tin and set it on the clean platter, opened the kitchen window, and stuck it out on the snowy sill. She knew what happened to cakes that were iced warm, everything melted. Her watch was still on the top of the dressers where she had left it the day before, but it had run down. She took the cake off the sill, felt it to see if it was cool enough, and put it on the kitchen table. One half she placed it flat, side down on the platter. She scooped out part of it and made a head with the section she had taken out. The spongy cake was pliable, easy to mold. She stuck all the separate members together with white icing and used the rest of the icing to cover the shape she had constructed. It looked slightly obscene, lying there soft and sugary, featureless on the platter. She set about clothing it, filling the cake decorator with bright pink icing. She made a smiling lush, liquid pink mouth and pink shoes to match. The cake looked peculiar, with only a mouth and no ear or eyes. With the other, she made a floral design on the pink dress and stuck a few in the air. Now the woman looked like an elegant antique china figurine. You look delicious, she told her. Already Peter's footsteps were coming up the stairs. Marian had a swift vision of her own monumental silliness, of how infantile and undignified she would seem in the eyes of of any rational observer. But that was not the point, she told herself nervously, pushing back a strand of hair. Though if Peter found her silly, she would believe it and she would accept his version of herself. He would laugh and they would sit down and have a quiet cup of tea. She smiled gravely at Peter as he came up out of the stairwell. Peter, why don't you go into the living room and sit down? She remained in the doorway for a moment, looking almost tenderly at the back of his head resting against the Chesterfield. Now that she had seen him again, the actual Peter, solid as ever, the fears of the evening before had dwindled to foolish hysteria, and the flight to Duncan had become a stupidity and an evasion. She could hardly remember what he would look like. Apparently, he did not find her silly when he had gone and he went quite rapidly. They did not have much of the conversation after all. He seemed embarrassed and eager to leave and even refused a cup of tea. She stood looking down at the figure. So Peter had not devoured it after all. It looked up at her with its silvery eyes, enigmatic, mocking, succulent. The cake, after all, was only a cake. She picked up the platter, carried it to the kitchen table, and located a fork. Already, the part of her not occupied with eating was having a wave of nostalgia for Peter, as though for a style that had gone out of fashion and was beginning to turn up on the sad Salvation Army clothes racks. Around the margin was an edging of gold scrollwork, and slightly above Peter's left ear was a thumb bag. Chapter 31 Analysis. In this chapter, Marian gets back the narration. That is, once again we come to the first person, there is narration. Also, her self confidence, self respect, and anger back again. She began cleaning with Ainsley's room, stuffing everything she had left behind into cardboard cartons. The half empty cosmetic jars and used lipsticks, the strata of old newspapers and magazines on the floor, the desiccated banana peel she found under the bed, the clothes she had rejected. When the floors and the furniture had been cleared, she dusted everything inside, including the moldings and the tops of the doors and the window sills. The amount of dirt that came off was astounding. It was like uncovering an extra floor. Then she washed the dishes, and after that, the kitchen window curtains. After lunch, she tackled the refrigerator. She could see well enough from holding the little to the jazz up light that they had better not to be opened. The freezing compartment she attacked with an ice pick, but she discovered that the thick covering of ice, though mossy and sponge like on the outside, was hard as a rock underneath, and she left it to melt a little before attempting to chip or pry it loose. She had just begun on the windows when the phone rang. It was Duncan. I realized Peter was trying to destroy me. Oh, said Duncan. I think I know what happened, but I'm not sure why. No, said Duncan. She was irritated with him for not wanting to discuss what she was going to do myself. Now that she was thinking of myself in the first person singular again, she found her own situation much more interesting than this. Now, Duncan said, we can't both be like that. You were tortured and confused last time. Face it, I thought you can't win. Why don't you come over for some tea a bit later then? The apartment's mess, she added apologetically. When he arrived, she was finishing the windows, standing on a chair and wiping off the white glass cleaner she had spread on them. We had not cleaned them for a long time, and they had got quite silted over with dust, and she was thinking it was going to be curious to be able to see out of them again. He wandered off in the direction of the kitchen after giving the window one last polish with a sleeve torn from one of Ainsley's abandoned blouses. She got down from the chair. Somewhat reluctantly, she likes to finish things once she has begun them, and there were still several windows left uncleared. Besides, the prospect of discussing the love life of Fisher Smith was not all that compelling, and went out to the kitchen. She found Duncan sitting in one of the chairs, regarding the open refrigerator door with a mixture of disdain and anxiety. What smell is here? Floor polish or window cleaner or some other things? She went over and opened the kitchen window. Tea or coffee, of course. There are few complications, but I think it will work out. Marian had called Clara shortly after she had heard the news about Ainsley's marriage, so she could not tell it was safe to come out of hiding. Later, she had called back. She thought he would go back to his apartment right away, but he had not. He did not want to. They were discussing about Len. He is afraid to go outside the house, though he seems perfectly happy as long as he stays in Arthur's room. The children adore him most of the time, and Marian must say it is rather nice having someone who takes them off my hands a bit. But the trouble is, he plays with all of Arthur's toys, and sometimes they get into fights. And yes, he has not been going to work at all. He has not even phoned them to tell them where he is. If he just lets himself go like this much longer, I'm not sure how I am going to cope with him. Duncan jerked and took his thumb out of his mouth. Duncan asked after a moment of silence, "Well, it is healthier than that way," Duncan said. He looked at me directly for the first time since he had come in. "You mean that stuff about Peter trying to destroy you?" "Peter was not trying to destroy you. Actually, you were trying to destroy him." He drank some coffee and passed it to give Marian some time, then added, "But the real truth is that it was not Peter at all. I was trying to destroy you. Maybe Peter was trying to destroy me, or maybe I was trying to destroy him, or we were both trying to destroy each other. How is that?" I had half the torso and the head left over, he nodded. He got him a fork and took the remains of the cadaver down from the shelf where she had put it. "I did not know you could bake cakes," he said after the first forkful. "Thank you," Marian said modestly. I, I like to cook when I have the time." Marian sat watching the cake disappear, the smiling pink mouth first, then the nose, then one eye. For a moment there was nothing left of the face but the last green eye. It gave me a peculiar sense of satisfaction to see him eat as if the work had not been wasted after all, though the cake was absorbed without exclamations of pleasure, green even without noticeable expression. Thank you for watching the video.